Welcome to C-Suite on Your Street, a show where we talk about what you need to know to start, run, and grow your small business. I'm LaTanya Howard, your host and a fellow small business owner of Howard Corporate Center right here in the city of Laurel. On this program, we'll speak with entrepreneurs and experts on a wide range of business topics. Our goal, to share resources, tips, and tricks to help you operate and think like a CEO, wherever you are on your entrepreneurial journey. Our first guest today is Robert Gatewood, president of Gatewood Marketing, a full-service advertising and marketing agency. Mr. Gatewood will share the basics of effective marketing and how it can help your business to develop and succeed. Mr. Gatewood, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Well, thank you for inviting me.
Yes, I'm so glad that you're here, and I'm so glad that we're talking about marketing, something that you're an expert on, really, because in my view, marketing is the lifeblood of every business. So no matter what business you're in, no matter what your business goals are, if you're not marketing, you're just not going to succeed. So I'm looking forward to everything that you have to show and share with us today. But before we get started, tell us a little bit about your background and your experience with marketing.
Thank you very much. I've been in marketing really most of my life. Even when I was a kid, I worked at my dad's grocery store, so I had an early introduction to business and marketing. But I've spent several years in corporate America doing marketing for several companies, and then I realized during that period what a disparate difference was between what corporations were doing and small companies were doing. These guys have entire divisions and people and vice presidents committed to marketing. Mm-hmm. And so when I looked at what was happening, I said, wow, small companies really don't stand a chance against these big corporations. So when I left corporate America, I decided to commit myself to helping small businesses grow through marketing.
Okay. And in your experience, you know, given that small businesses are your niche, because if I'm not mistaken, you have a national clientele,
that's
correct?
Right. That's right.
And you work with businesses of all sizes, from, you know, multi-million, perhaps even multi-billion-dollar companies. But your niche is small businesses. What is it specifically, besides the disparity that you just mentioned, that motivates you to work with small businesses in particular?
What is the need? And with any business, you have to identify your niche. So that's a lesson that I'm sharing with others, but also have to practice it myself. So I've chosen the niche of small companies. One, because I was a small company myself most of my life, and I understand the needs and wants, which is one of the fundamentals of marketing. Identifying a need and a want, which is marketing 101. And so when I can speak to small businesses with a voice in which I'm familiar, it makes my job easier and it makes it more effective for my audience. Small businesses have unique needs. Because when I was doing corporate America thing, they were bigger, they had more different needs than the small companies, but all of those resources that big corporations were using were not necessary for small companies. So what I did, I stripped away all the fluff and the fat and said, look, these are the specific needs of small companies. Now there are some basics that apply no matter what size your company is. And that's where I have taken this approach to small companies. Make sure you understand the basics. If you understand the basics, so many other things fall in place.
Right. Okay. That's good information to have. And now that you gave us a good segue into the marketing basics, because there are a few paradigms that you are going to share with us to help the viewers understand marketing, because it really is a big animal.
It's a big animal.
And it's a lot of information out there that pertains to marketing, and it's kind of hard to sift through what is applicable to your business and what is going to be effective for your business goals. So I'm looking forward to talking about those two paradigms. But let's start with the marketing basics. What exactly is marketing in basic terms?
Well, the best way to understand marketing is that you have to be better than your competition in identifying and satisfying the needs and wants of target audiences. And target is the operative word. Most companies fail because they don't invest in marketing or advertising. And when you think about it, if I didn't understand something and I was afraid I wasn't going to get a return on my investment, I wouldn't do that either. So what you have to do, the option is not to advertise or not, it's to advertise that works. So that's what marketing prepares you to do, because when you understand who your audience is and you target properly, your advertising will actually work. So we have to start with the umbrella of marketing where we understand the audience and target those resources to that right audience, and then the other things tend to fall into place.
Okay, so with that in mind, is it fair to say that marketing is when you're simply just trying to identify who your client is or who your target audience is? Is that it, or is it more than that?
Well, I don't want to dismiss marketing as this ideative exercise that has no measurable outcome, because marketing is actually a science. It's not a science like math, but it's a soft science, a combination of art and science. And we call it a hybrid, so it's a soft science. And then we have to look at it as what are the different components. how can we get marketing to help the other factors of marketing work, which are advertising, benefit selling, and customer service. But we have to start from a foundation of marketing, of targeting that audience through demographics, through geographics, through psychographics. Once you understand those, everything else tends to fall into place.
Well, why don't we help our viewers understand those three terms a little bit? And I hope you remember what you just said because okay, but you said the demographics.
Right.
Tell us in simple terms, what do you mean when you say that?
Well, let's look at it this way. The needs of an 18-year-old is substantially different from the needs of an 80-year-old. So when we're marketing, who is our audience? Is it an 18-year-old? Is it a 25 to 54? Those are demographics: age, gender, income, race. Those are demographics. So when we think about marketing, if you're a business owner out there saying to yourself, who is my audience? You have to start building this customer profile. And you start with demographics.
Right.
What are their ages? What are their income? Are they married or are they single? That's the first one. The second one is the geographics. Where are they located? I've had many clients that say, look, I want to advertise on this big radio station, but they're working in a hair salon that only reaches about a 5-mile radius. So a big mistake among many advertisers is that they're advertising to a market, they're spending advertising resources to a market that's never going to come to their shop. So if I'm a small company and I'm trying to geographic target, I want to make sure I'm reaching that 5-mile radius, which may not be mass media. It may be direct mail or some other way.
Right.
And then psychographic, that's more about the lifestyle. How does this person view life? What are their beliefs, their cultures, and so forth? That information is a little harder to get, but once you get those three together, the demographics, the geographics, and the lifestyle, the psychographics, you build a profile where you can walk into a room almost and just say, look, that is my customer.
Okay, wow, that's really good information. Thank you for taking the time to explain those three things.
My pleasure.
Now, you mentioned advertising, and I know when I was very early in my business, I would confuse or at least think that marketing and advertising were synonymous.
Right.
But in fact, they're not. And I think the first paradigm that you're going to share with us, the ABCs of marketing, will help the viewers to understand what the distinction is between marketing, advertising, and some other subcomponents, if you will, of marketing. So why don't you walk us through those ABCs of marketing?
Okay, well, let's go back to marketing for a minute. So we've identified our audience. It's okay, look, we understand it. There's a certain demographic, a certain geographic, and a certain lifestyle. Now we have to deliver that message that we formulated during our marketing stage to that audience. And that's where advertising comes in. We have overcomplicated advertising. Really, advertising is just about delivering impressions. It's delivering your message. If you do your marketing right, you would deliver that message to the right audience. There's two basic types of advertising. There's the direct action advertising, where somebody just say, look, I have this item. There's a strong call to action. Come get it. And then there's the indirect. That's the more subtle types of advertising. You may be talking about a PR campaign, a newsletter, or social media, where there's a less of a call to action, but it's more of a nurturing process of building the relationship. So you have to do a little bit of both, have to do some of both of those to actually have an effective advertising campaign. So that's advertising.
So that's the A of the ABCs
That's the
of
A of
marketing.
the ABCs,
Okay,
right.
very good.
And then the B is the benefit selling. Benefit selling is about advertising. If you're selling, you start in your marketing phase, you go to advertising, now you have to sell that person. Now, everybody who you advertise to that may call you a shop is not necessarily ready to buy at that particular moment. So we have to go through a sales process, and that's understanding the benefits of the product. We have to sell the benefits, not the features. There's a big difference. The benefit is, what does this product do for me? What problem does it solve? And then the second part of selling is handling objections. Once that person says, look, okay, the price is too high, can you have a response to say, okay, we have another price that maybe doesn't have as many features, but we can still solve that need. And then the last one is closing, asking for the sale. Okay. So you have to do the benefit selling, we have to do the overcoming objections, and closing, which is asking for the sale. And then the last one is C, is customer service. Okay. Customer service, it goes back to those metrics of marketing. As I said earlier, it's not this just ideative thing of smoke and mirrors. We have to understand there's actually a science to marketing. And one of those things is the cost per acquisition. Every customer has a cost. Every customer has a cost. That means you spend the amount of money divided by the number of customers you get. You have a CPA called the cost per acquisition. Customer service answers another acronym, which is LTV, lifetime value. How long is that customer going to be with you, and how much money am I going to get from this customer over the lifetime of this customer? We do that we extend the lifetime value with good customer service. If you are just going after one-off sales, you will not succeed as a business. Part of your business model should be based on getting return customers and referrals.
Right. Right. Okay. So to recap, the ABCs of marketing are advertising, benefit selling, and of course, customer service or customer care. Do you have any success stories to share with us of small business owners that perhaps did not have a strong marketing strategy, and then you came in and helped them, and how that might have changed the outcome of their business?
Oh, absolutely. I remember when I was just getting started, I was a company over in Virginia. They were working out of the back of an Econo Lodge, small kitchen, a diet company, and they wanted to broaden their marketplace. So they came to me and they hired me as their marketing consultant. And so my first thing, I'd done all this stuff in test tubes, but I hadn't applied it to a real live company. But I was really sold on this idea of targeting by profiling. So the first thing we did was identify who the customer was. And when you think about diet, we said, well, we did a research, actually, we did some surveys and found out it was about 70% women. So immediately we say to ourselves, now we have to speak to that audience. And of course, women have different needs than men. And, a lot of things they have in common, but there are some different things and different hot buttons. So we focused our marketing efforts on women. The other thing we did, we focused on the geographics, because we could not advertise we couldn't do regional advertising because they didn't have the distribution points all over the city and outside the state. So we had to focus on a strategy that could allow us to focus on these different geographic areas and get lower advertising rates. So, this marketing thing is not something you just wake up one morning and decide to do. It's really, you have to make all these parts work in synergy: the advertising, the selling, and the customer service. You can't just do one or two. You have to do all three to get the synergy working. Right. So that was one example. So to make a long story short, that company that started now in the back of a Econo Lodge is now a national company. We actually are shipping now from coast to coast, because we followed these proven steps. The secret sauce of marketing is understanding who your customer is, and another one is building those relationships that are necessary to get customers. I'm back on advertising for a minute. Advertising is also not just about most people spend all of their time on customer acquisition, but there are other stakeholders that are very important in the success of a business. Those are your suppliers, your distributors, your contractors, your employees, the community, government agencies. You have to bring those people into the fold as well to make all of these parts work. And that's what we did with this success story that I've talked about out in Virginia. And another company was a tax company. Same story. They started with one location, but we took this same approach. Who is the audience? Who is the audience? And now let's take a geographic approach. And by applying these proven techniques, this company has gone from one location. Now they have locations in D.C., they have locations in Baltimore, and out in Virginia, because we took the time and nurtured the customers, understood who the customer was, and did effective advertising. Right. One of the problems, LaTanya, is that companies don't advertise, and I can't overstate this. They're afraid it's not going to work. And because of that, they don't advertise. That's not an excuse. You have to advertise. You have to just make it work. Right, right. And to that point, another aha moment, if you will, that I had when you and I talked before is that marketing really begins before you launch your business. Absolutely. I think one of many mistakes that I and I would imagine most business owners make in their business, because being a business owner is about really a series of mistakes until you realize success. But, I had the impression that you begin marketing after you actually launch your business. But the smarter business approach is to begin marketing before you launch your business. It's really a way of doing some due diligence, like you said, identifying who your client profile is, what their needs and wants are, so that when you launch, you are effectively advertising and communicating your message to the right profile. And you're right. And one of the tragedies for small companies is that they don't have the resources to sometimes respond from a substantial loss in bad advertising. So sometimes bad advertising can literally put them out of business. That's why it's important to invest in marketing up front. Marketing is an investment, and the more you spend, the more you stand to gain or lose. So the companies that invest in marketing tend to be the ones that are left standing. Right, right. Very good. So let's talk about another paradigm that you want to talk about to help the viewers to understand how to really get their hands around this thing called marketing. So you've already given us the ABCs of marketing, which I think is very helpful. Another aha moment, I've had so many aha moments with you. So I just learned so much information in just the short conversations that we've had.
But one of the things that you mentioned to me recently is that your marketing and your advertising strategy really needs to change, or rather should align with where you are in your business cycle.
That's exactly right.
You know, again, a thought that I had when I first started business was that, okay, whatever worked for me in the beginning should still be working for me now 5 or 6 years later,
Right.
and that may or may not be the case. So I want you to share with the viewers more about the aligning of your marketing / advertising strategies with the life cycle that your business is in. And you can tell us about that along the lines of the different phases of the life cycle.
Okay, let's look at it from the perspective of an industry or a product.
Okay.
Most people, when they start a company, if you're starting from scratch and you're in the industry where there's a lot of research going on, you're trying to figure out what the product is, how it works, how you're going to launch this business, when you're going to do it. There's a research phase that's actually taking place at the beginning of a business or the business cycle. Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of companies, they don't budget for that. So they just skip over this part. They're not doing the proper research. They're not doing the adequate planning. But that's required. That's necessary to have a successful company. So you have to, if you're doing that, just realize there's not going to be much money made. Mm-hmm. And if you haven't set money aside for that, then you're probably shorting yourself. I mean, you can still be very successful, but I think companies that are going to be successful in the long run spend some time and effort in that research and development phase.
Okay.
Then we get into the introduction. That's when you've launched the product or you've launched the business. You're in an industry that's going through this introduction phase. Once again, there's not a lot of revenue being generated at this time because people don't understand how it works. Uh-huh. They're saying, wow, what is this thing called the telephone at some point? We understand what a telephone is now, but there was a time when they were used to using different ways of communicating. So that you have to go this period where people have to be introduced to the product, this educational phase.
Okay.
And I'm just going to inject quickly here that companies need to understand what phase of the industry their business is in
addition to the business itself.
In the business itself, right.
Wow.
Because the industry is really what's going to dictate the demand for the product. So if you're in the introduction phase, the demand is low, but you still have to alert people that you have to almost create the demand because it's a good idea, it's a good product, but people just don't know how it works or if they even need it. So that's the introduction phase. Then if you hang around long enough, you play your cards right, you're going to slide into the growth phase. And growth phase is where that's where you like to be.
Okay.
The challenge with the growth phase, LaTonya, is that people get comfortable. That's when things are really doing well. Things are taking off. I mean, you got money coming in that you hadn't planned on. People just really, sometimes they overreact. They go out and start buying bigger offices and, buying cars for all employees and getting the wall signs put up. Right. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that if you understand that this is a temporary phase. All of these phases, none of these are permanent. If you understand that this is a temporary phase and you govern yourself accordingly, this could be the best part of your business. Because during this phase, you're starting to also look over the hill at what's coming. Because right behind that is the maturity phase. Now, maturity phase, that's when people starting to notice a little different. They had this explosive growth when they've gone out and bought 3 or 4 cars. Their dogs have a pool now, flat screens in every room of the house and the office.
Right.
And now sales are leveled off.
Right.
And they're like, wait a minute, we're doing the same thing we did last year at this time, but we're not getting the same return. Well, it wasn't anything that the company did, it was something that happened in the industry. Because in the maturity phase, competition is fierce. In that growth phase, you may have been of one of 2 or 3. In the maturity phase, you could be one of many dozens. Right. And that will actually start to manifest itself in your numbers. You're starting to see this drop off. You start to see the big stores get in. All of a sudden, the Walmarts and the Amazons and all these guys, you're competing not with just direct competition, but indirect competition.
Right.
And so that's the maturity phase. And then at the maturity phase, there's actually a decline. Maturity phase can sit there for a while where you're actually really battling it out. But during the decline phase, the demand for that service and products actually trickles off.
Okay.
So just imagine if you're a company that's doing the same approach to advertising from the growth phase into the decline phase. During the growth phase, your advertising strategy is really directional. It just tell me, all the customers need to know is how to get to it. You have the best, it's easy to find, and it's easy to pay for. In that maturity phase, you need to start separating yourself from the competition. So look, I got a good mousetrap. Mine may catch 3 mice at a time, but the other guy only catches 1.
Right.
So you got to start differentiating yourself from the competition. In the decline phase, by this time, most of the money has actually left that industry. And if you're going to stick around, This is where people usually have multiple streams of income or
Right.
multiple businesses going.
Where
This was,
differentiation begins to come more important, I
that's
guess.
exactly right.
Yeah.
Because you can't, there's really, the market is so saturated now and the demand has dropped off because people have moved on to something else. They have actually decided this product has run its course. Now, you can't be too hasty and jump out because sometimes there's a resurgence. Because during this decline phase, what many companies have done, they've reintroduced the product with different purposes. They may rebrand it. They may decide to attach it to something else. So some companies have been very successful in this decline phase. So what's important for the business owner is to understand where you are.
Right.
Let's use a medical parallel. I mean, it's an impractical physician to only discover that there's what the ventricle and the atrium of the heart is upon opening the client's chest. You need to know that before you get in there. You can't just say, look, I'm opening this person's chest. Wow, there's an atrium, there's a ventricle. Wow, I didn't see that coming. The same thing when it comes to businesses. There's a introduction, a growth, a maturity, and decline. Companies need to understand that before they open their company. Don't just wait until you're in the growth phase or the decline phase. Wow, I didn't see that coming.
Right.
Just know that it's coming.
Right. That's very helpful information. You know, you told us about how marketing and advertising needs to differ in the growth and maturity phase. And the introduction phase, which you said is the phase where people really just need to be educated about the product. They might have some resistance to it because it's new and they don't know necessarily if it's something that's going to fit their needs and wants. So how would a company market or advertise in the introduction phase?
Well, you have to do subtle type. We talked about those two types of advertising. We talked about direct action and the indirect action, which is communication.
Okay.
You're doing PR, you're doing sending out newsletters, you're holding workshops, you're doing seminars, you are educating people. You are nurturing them so when the growth phase hit, you have already cultivated them into potential customers. So you're not doing as much direct action advertising. When you get into the growth phase, you can put the PR aside for a minute. You say, look, come get it.
Gotcha.
I have it. I stack them high and I sell them cheap. Come get it.
Right.
So it's a different approach for each one of these phases.
Right. Okay. And you mentioned that even when a business or when a business or an industry reaches the decline phase, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going out of business or that your business is a failure necessarily. It's just the normal cycle of industries and businesses.
Right, and sometimes a business will actually have a resurgence. I can use the recent real estate industry. We had a bust back in about 2008, 2009, where, real estate agents were out. They were working at McDonald's, they were cutting grass because their industry had really fallen flat.
Right.
But guess what happened? The ones that hung in there now are today's millionaires because they hung around, they found other ways, they repurposed their skills. They were doing short sales, they were doing seminars, they were doing workshops, they were becoming consultants. So the people that hung around in that decline of the real estate industry are the ones that are doing very well right now.
Right, and the key, like you mentioned, is the differentiation. That's when that becomes more key for
right.
survival.
That's exactly right.
Absolutely, great. Well, these two paradigms, the ABCs of marketing and understanding the industry and business life cycle, I think is extremely helpful information for people to have a better understanding of marketing and how it can help their business to grow and succeed and endure, really. And what we like to do for each show is to provide 3 action items that people can act upon today to move them towards the desired outcome of marketing. So one of the 3 steps that you and I talked about before was the importance of narrowing your niche.
Right.
So tell us, very briefly, how that can be an action item that viewers can take today.
Oh, absolutely. You can do some research. Some people can do it intuitively. You've been working in this industry for so long, you can just automatically know who your clients are or your target audience is. So just narrow away all the people that are not your customers. Now, sometimes that might sound a little harsh to some people, but some people are really never going to be a customer. You're wasting time and money trying to make them your customer.
Right.
So my advice would be to identify who is the most likely person to buy your service and focus on that audience.
Okay.
Don't make the niche so small that you can't reach critical mass or get to a point where you can't make a living doing it. But in most companies, particularly small companies, their focus is too broad. So
Right.
narrow that audience, and you might say, look, I'm focusing on women. I may be focusing on women that they go to church every Sunday, women of a certain age, women living on a certain street. So you can narrow that, and all of a sudden you are speaking their language by saying, this is my audience.
Okay, great. So another action item will be to match services to your ideal clients' wants and needs.
That's exactly right. Because once you once you have identified who your audience is, you may realize that you have a lot of dead weight in your inventory. Items, you have some SKUs that are never going to move. You need to get rid of them because now you have a more narrow focus. Some items that you're carrying inventory, something that you're wasting money, services that you're offering.
Right.
You have staff sitting around offering services that no longer now align with your audience.
Right.
Because you're going to be more efficient. You're going to have more time to do things, time to do it better, because now you've narrowed your focus, and now simultaneously you're narrowing the products that you're going to be offering because now you have a sharper focus.
Okay. And then the third one is to implement an advertising or delivery system to reach your ideal client where they are.
That's so true because you don't just pick a radio station because that's the one you like, okay? You say, look, wow, I like Tom Jones Morning Show.
Right.
Look, maybe your audience is not that audience. You have to pick an audience that's actually in line with your audience, pick a advertising mechanism that are in line with your audience and the target you're trying to reach and that product you're trying to sell. So you want to make sure that you advertising, and this is something else I have to say this because people are so afraid to pull the trigger on that advertising because they're afraid it's not going to work. If you target properly and you advertising on the right station, whether it doesn't have to be radio, it could be social media, it could be through some type of web campaign, it could be print ad, it could be direct mail, wherever your audience is, you can now advertise with an assurance. You can be bold, and that's what's separating the big companies from the small companies. They're afraid to advertise.
Right.
And
right.
It's killing them.
It is scary as a small business owner because all we see is the dollar signs
That's
rather
right.
than the return that we'll get on those dollars.
That's exactly right.
Yes.
And that really has been a sword of Damocles for these small companies.
Right, right. And you actually have a bonus action item, exceed expectations all the time.
Wow, if I could just crystallize this, if I could just hang it up on people's around their necks, brand it on their forehead, that's going to separate you from the rest. Most companies are not going to exceed expectations. I can, without doubt, say that's been the success for my company. People are shocked. Some of the things I do. They say, I did not expect you to do that. I'm so used to the company saying, look, I've got your money. Sometimes they disappear, or they do like just marginal follow-up. You need to do something that's going to shock them because go back to those marketing metrics. We talked about marketing being a science. It's a soft science. Cost per acquisition, lifetime value. When you exceed expectations, one, that customer is going to be around forever.
Okay.
My average client has been around about 15 to 20 years. I'm not trying to date myself here a little bit, but they've been around for a while. And guess what? They are telling other people. I can spend less money now on advertising because I have brand ambassadors out here working for me in the name of my clients.
Right.
That's what exceeding expectation does. It brings down those cost numbers that you're spending on advertising because now you have others out there doing it for you.
Right, right. Well, this has been some very helpful information. I thank you so much for sharing it with us. Do you have any closing remarks before we wrap up for our viewers?
I would just say understand that marketing is not something for the weak of heart, okay? And you might just get some help. I'm not just promoting myself, but there are people out here that spend their whole lives doing this.
Right.
You can't just go out here as an attorney to walk out here and just start getting people out of jail because you didn't have any experience at it. Same thing applies to business. Just because you're a good cupcake maker or a good roofer or a good attorney doesn't mean that you're going to be an expert marketer. So I would say do not be afraid to ask for help.
Excellent, excellent advice. Well, Mr. Gatewood, thank you so much for joining us today. And don't you go anywhere. We have another guest coming right up.
Laurel has undergone many changes and seen much growth throughout its history, but the one thing that remains constant is the progressive spirit that keeps the city moving forward. Many of the projects currently underway in Laurel align themselves with Maryland's vision of smart and green growth. Transit-oriented development, or TODs, have become a primary focus within the city, bringing new and exciting opportunities. Town Center at Laurel offers mixed-use, high-density developments that include theaters, restaurants, shops, and soon-to-come residential units. In close proximity to Main Street shopping is the MARC train station. Residents and visitors are encouraged to use Laurel's public transportation systems, which creates a more walkable community. And since Laurel is a designated base realignment and closure zone, they're eligible for state funding of public infrastructure improvements that will positively impact both Laurel's present day and future economies. Although the face of Laurel is changing, it's changing for the better. Come be a part of this Maryland community that's smart, green, and growing.
We're now joined by Dr. Tiffany Butler, owner of Harmonious Living Chiropractic Fitness and Wellness Center, right here in Laurel. Dr. Butler is going to provide some insights about the importance of chiropractic care for business owners and their employees. Dr. Butler, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome, you're welcome. Now, the idea of chiropractic care is something that many business owners probably don't think is something that they need to be concerned about. So I'm really looking forward to the information that you have to share. But before we do so, tell us a little bit about yourself and how long you've been practicing medicine.
Okay, so I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area. I went to Morgan State University and worked a little bit after school, but then I went down to Life University in Marietta, Georgia, where I completed my doctoral degree in chiropractic.
Okay, very good. And what motivated you to practice chiropractic care?
Oh, I've always been interested in helping people and the idea of the body healing itself, so I didn't know anything existed like that because I never went to a chiropractor before actually going to school.
Okay.
So the whole idea of holistic healing and using my hands, that really drew me in.
Okay, very good. Now tell us, what exactly does chiropractic mean?
Okay, so chiropractic is a form of healthcare that emphasizes the restoring of an individual's health through adjusting the spinal column.
Okay.
So
all right.
basically putting your body in the best position so they can heal.
Okay, and I guess this is a spinal column here, right?
Right, this is a spinal column here. So you have 3 areas of spine. You have the cervical region, which is the neck, the mid-back region, which is the thoracic spine, and the lumbar region, which is the lower back.
Okay, very good. So when we talk about chiropractic care, why is this something that small business owners in particular need to be concerned about?
Very good question. Because a lot of employees, they're either sitting down for long periods of time, or they're standing up for a long period of time, or they're in awkward body positions, such as if they're lifting and then twisting type of motion. So the main thing is to make sure that your employees are in proper position when they're performing certain activities.
Okay, and when you say proper position, what does that mean exactly?
All right, so basically to keep the spine neutral, and when the spine is neutral and supported by the muscles, it reduces excessive strain on the muscle tissues.
Okay, so we'll talk a little bit more about some specific things that business owners can do for themselves and their employees to make sure that the spine is spine neutral. Is that what you just said? Okay, I learned a new word. I'm going to show that off now. But what are some common chiropractic issues that you've seen among small business owners and entrepreneurs?
Okay, particularly for those who are administrative, who are sitting for long periods of time, a lot of time they have a lot of strain on their neck, mid-back area, as well as having headaches because they're in sort of this position where their head is forward, use the computer for a long period of time, so their shoulders start to roll forward here, and usually they'll do a sort of straining on their readjust. That's usually what I see. So one of the things I ask patients when they come in is like, okay, what are you doing all day at work? Are you sitting? Are you using a computer? Are you driving? So same thing with truck drivers that have some of that pain in the upper neck area, upper back area, as well as with the lower back.
Okay, so that's an interesting point. So if you know, as a business owner, if I have an employee, for example, who says that they're suffering from headaches, of course, there can be a number of reasons for that, but one reason might be just the posture or the equipment or the furniture that I have for them.
Right, correct. So the idea would be if you're sitting, if I'm sitting at a computer here, so should have arm support for the chairs. My knees should be at 90 degrees as well as the hips, so that reduces stress off the hip area. And this muscle here, if you can see, it goes right to the lower back, but it also goes right into the front of the hip.
Okay.
So if the legs are down like this, it will actually put strain. So the person may start to feel hip pain here or lower back pain.
Okay.
Next, you want to work your way up to the neck and upper back area. So you want to make sure the monitor is sort of at eye level, so that reduces them from sort of crouching like this.
Okay, and let's talk about that one by one because, like I said, this is one of those tips and areas of business that some business owners may not even think about. And when you and I spoke not too long before we began taping, you were telling me about, you know, the idea of maybe matching furniture to your employees.
Right.
And that can be very daunting because the idea of having to repurchase furniture or customize furniture to an employee's needs seems to be very costly, but you provided some very low-cost ways that business owners can satisfy the needs of their employees while maintaining chiropractic care. So let's talk specifically about a desk. Like what are some of the things that business owners need to be concerned about for the desks that they have for their employees so that their chiropractic care is intact?
Okay, so If you already have a monitor and your monitor doesn't raise up, so something as simple as putting books underneath,
Okay.
to just elevating it at eye level
Okay.
will help.
So again, the screen of the top of
The
the
top
screen
of the screen should be at eye level.
at the employee's eye level.
Right. Now, if you're
Okay.
using something like a laptop, which is absolutely probably the worst thing to work on for prolonged periods of time, elevate the laptop and then just use a wireless keyboard
Okay.
to sort of let the laptop be the monitor and then the keyboard.
Okay.
Yeah.
And speaking of keyboards, do you recommend that keyboards be placed up on top of the desk or in a tray underneath the desk?
Okay, so it depends on the height of the employees. So if the desk is kind of high, where they're sort of scrunching their shoulders, then it would be best to bring it under because that
Okay.
allow them to sort of relax the shoulders and not put necessary strain.
Okay. Now, what about seating? What are some of the things that business owners need to look out in terms of seating for their employees to make sure that they're properly positioned?
Okay, so ideally, make sure you have an armrest so that way their arms are being supported and the shoulders are being relaxed, and that the chair does elevate and it does go down.
Okay.
So in case someone's taller and someone's shorter, and if the chair, to make sure again you're at 90 degrees, if the chair is too high, then put some books underneath the feet just
Okay.
to even out and take pressure off the hips and the lower back.
Okay. And did you mention the idea of putting a pillow in the back of the chair to maintain a certain position?
Right, you can't do that because what happens is when we sit for prolonged periods of time, we go between this flex position and sitting up straight. It's just a natural thing to do. But if you're gonna be sitting and you can't get up and move around, something as small as a throw pillow, you put on the couch, or
Okay.
when I go for long drives, I put something right in the small of my back, and that usually helps my back from fatiguing.
Okay. So the idea of having furniture and resources that are suited for chiropractic care for your employees doesn't mean that you have to go out and buy all of this expensive furniture.
Right, you don't have
It could be a very low cost approach, just like you mentioned.
Yes.
Okay. So you might have mentioned this before, but when you talk about some of the specific issues or injuries that can come out of poor posture or not having the computer at the right distance or slouching too much, what are some of the specific issues that can come out of that, and how do you remedy it?
Okay, so we call them repetitive stress injuries. A main thing, especially people use computers, is carpal tunnel. And that's from not having the proper support, whether under the wrist being supported, they're sort of like this, or they're extended for prolonged periods of time. That's something that I see often, as well as, again, with the neck and upper back pain, because the computer's too low and they start to get fatigued and they stay in a position and they start getting headaches. So in my office, in terms you asked about care, so we do spinal adjustments, and with the adjustments, it basically mobilizes the spine so you can move around better, which in turn will relax those muscles. Again, putting your body in the best position, and then teach you corrective things you could do at home.
Okay. And what might be some of those corrective strategies that people can use?
Okay, so getting up every hour, just walking around, stretching, that'll help, just getting some movement into the joints, making sure when you're laying down at night that you have a pillow that properly supports your neck. And definitely if you're waking up with a stiff or tight neck, that means you don't have the right pillow. Some people like to hang on to pillows, but you gotta get rid of and invest in a really good pillow. They give you support while you land on your back and while you land on your side. Again, you want your spine to be neutral.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Now, you said repetitive stress injury. So what are the long-term implications of that? If a person doesn't correct that, how does that impact the employee's overall well-being, and something that business owners, of course, need to be concerned about?
Well, they'll take time off. If they're having the back pain or neck pain, they're going to take sick days off just to relax and recover, which means, and when they do come to work, they may not be as productive because their neck and back hurts, which in turn is going to hurt the business, because when they're there, they're not producing, whether they're there or if they're at home. So that definitely is going to affect the business in terms of the bottom line.
Okay. So what other types of strategies, if any, can business owners and their employees employ on an ongoing basis just to maintain chiropractic care and keep the employees, performing optimally as much as possible?
I would highly recommend implementing a wellness program into your business, and that could cost little to no money, and it could first start with sort of like a challenge to lose weight, because people who are overweight usually have stress that's going to be on the lower back. They're going to have lower back pain. If they don't feel it now, they're going to feel it later. Something as small as that. So maximizing the lunch hour. So it don't take that long to eat. Maybe eat for 30 minutes and then go for a walk. But as a group and as an effort. And I think people normally do well when they have that support and they're doing it as a team. That's a good start right there.
Okay, excellent advice. Now, one of the things that we like to do, at each show is to provide some actionable steps that the viewers can take now to get them on track to chiropractic care. And one of the steps that we talked about before, you've already mentioned, and that's getting up and walking around every hour. You mentioned that just helps to move the joints. What else is an advantage of doing that?
Reduce stiffness, as well as drinking enough water. A lot of us don't drink the water as we should. And the disc actually is sort of like a jelly donut, which is in between the vertebrae, which is the small bones, and the spine. And it's made up 80% water.
Wow.
So if we're not hydrating those discs, they're not getting enough water, which can also contribute to having some lower back pain. So making sure you drink enough water and getting up, just moving around.
Okay, I did not know that. Okay. Another action item is to periodically check the body for proper alignment while sitting. Now, you briefly alluded to this earlier, but what exactly is the proper alignment when you're sitting?
So you got to think just being neutral, again, 90-90. So self-checking each other, right? So 90 degrees at the knees, 90 degrees at the hips, and 90 degrees at the elbows. And you're looking straight ahead. This is where you want to be. Not leaning on one side, and don't use the phone between your head. Some people do that.
Okay.
Even with cell phones, they do that.
Okay.
But maintain it as neutral position.
What is the correct position for a telephone then?
You should be here.
Okay.
Right there.
Or use a Bluetooth device or
Bluetooth
something.
device is
okay.
good too. Yep.
Okay, excellent. And then a third action item will be to use supplemental support to get furniture and other types of equipment in line with proper posture, whether it's pillows or whatever the case may be, right?
Right. So again, if you can't elevate the monitor, putting a book underneath and putting it up to where the top of the screen is eye level, as well as putting something under the feet if the feet are hanging, just to make sure it's up to the 90 degree.
All right, excellent. Well, this has all been very helpful advice, and I know that the viewers have been enlightened about how easy it is to maintain chiropractic care, not only for themselves, but also for their employees. So thank you for your insights. Do you have any closing remarks before we wrap up to give to our viewers?
Take care of your spine. A lot of people know to take care of the teeth, but they don't think about their posture until someone says something about their posture.
Okay.
So just being aware actually helps.
Okay, very good. And now we're more aware thanks to you. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thanks again for joining us, Dr. Butler.
Thank you.
And thank you for tuning in to C-Suite on Your Street. Be sure to join us again next time to learn more about how to start, run, and grow your small business. Until then, I'd like to leave you with our quote of the month. Don't go where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail. Take care.